the rust and the relic. When we look up at the night sky, we see a flickering red dot, a spark that has fueled human dreams for centuries. We have branded it a second Earth, a backup plan, and a sanctuary for a future humanity. But if you strip away the layers of science fiction and romanticized ambition, the reality of Mars is far darker. It is not a new beginning. It is a corpse. Mars is a planetary fossil that shows us, with terrifying clarity, exactly what happens when a world dies. There is a reason the ancients named this world after the god of war. It is the color of dried blood. Yet, in reality, this is not blood. It is rust, fine, toxic iron oxide that saturates the entire landscape. But rust is more than a color. It is a witness. Rust only forms when iron reacts with oxygen and water. This tells us that billions of years ago, Mars was not red. It was a vibrant blue. It possessed deep oceans, rushing rivers, and a thick, protective atmosphere, much like the Earth we know today. It may have even been a cradle for life. But something went catastrophically wrong. Mars is smaller than Earth, about half its diameter, and its core cooled much faster. As its internal heat dissipated, the planet's magnetic heart stopped beating. The protective magnetosphere collapsed, leaving the world defenseless. For eons, the relentless solar wind acted like a cosmic sandblaster, stripping away the air, evaporating the oceans, and extinguishing the warmth. Mars is not just a barren rock. It is a garden that withered and died because it lost its shield. Today, standing on the Martian surface would be a psychological and physical nightmare. The atmosphere is 100 times thinner than Earth's and is composed of 95% carbon dioxide. There is nothing to breathe, but the lack of air creates something even more unsettling. A silence so deep it feels unnatural. Because the Martian air is so thin, sound waves cannot travel effectively. If you stood just a few meters away from a companion and shouted with all your might, they would likely hear nothing but a faint, distorted whisper. It is a world of eternal, crushing silence. The hostile frontier. Mars is not merely uninhabitable. It is actively hostile to the biological machinery of a human being. Without a pressurized suit, you wouldn't just suffocate, you would experience the Armstrong limit in its most brutal form. The atmospheric pressure is so low that the boiling point of liquids drops below the temperature of the human body. The moisture on your tongue, in your eyes, and inside your lungs would begin to boil away instantly. If the vacuum of the atmosphere doesn't kill you, the sun certainly will. On Earth, we are shielded from the sun's lethal output, but on Mars, the surface is bombarded by high-energy cosmic rays and solar radiation every single second. A trip to the red planet exposes an astronaut to radiation levels hundreds of times higher than anything experienced on Earth, significantly increasing the risk of cancer and acute tissue damage. Surviving here means retreating from the surface. To call this world home, we would have to live like insects, hiding in the dark shadows of natural lava tubes or digging deep into the regolith. We would not be explorers walking under a foreign sun, we would be prisoners hiding from the sky. Then, there is the dust, a fine, electrostatically charged powder that clings to everything. Martian dust storms are not like the localized weather events on Earth. They are global catastrophes. Occasionally, a storm grows so massive that it envelopes the entire planet, blotting out the sun for months at a time. In this total darkness, temperatures plummet even further, and solar-powered technology becomes useless. Imagine being trapped in a tiny, pressurized habitat millions of miles from home, listening to the relentless scratching of toxic sand against the metal walls in pitch-black silence for half a year. This dust is also chemically poisonous. It contains high concentrations of perchlorates, salts that are lethal to the human thyroid and can cause systemic organ failure. The very soil of Mars is a chemical minefield. Despite these horrific conditions, we continue to send our emissaries. Currently, Mars is the only planet in the known universe inhabited entirely by robots. But for them, it is also a graveyard. Scattered across the dunes are the frozen metal bodies of our greatest explorers, Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity machines that fought the elements until their batteries died and their glass eyes were blinded by the rust. The mirror of reality. The abandoned rovers on Mars are monuments to our curiosity, but they are also grim reminders of how difficult this world truly is. They sit frozen in time, buried under layers of red dust, waiting for human masters who may never arrive. We often speak of terraforming Mars, of warming the poles, thickening the air, and turning the red desert green. We treat it as an engineering problem, a puzzle to be solved by our ingenuity. But perhaps we are looking at it all wrong. Mars is not a blank canvas for our future. It is a mirror for our present. It shows us exactly how fragile a living planet really is. It is a stark proof that an atmosphere is a fragile gift, not a cosmic guarantee. It proves that oceans can vanish into the void and that a vibrant, living world can turn into a silent ball of rust if its delicate balance is destroyed. The gravity on Mars is only 38% of Earth's, a factor that would cause human bones to demineralize and muscles to wither over long durations. Even the simple act of walking would be a reminder that you do not belong there. Every breath you take in a habitat would be a victory of technology over a world that wants you dead. Mars is a treasure trove of scientific data, a place where we can study the history of the solar system and perhaps find the fossilized remains of ancient microbes. It is a fascinating destination for a robot and perhaps a daring challenge for a highly trained astronaut. But looking at its frozen, silent deserts makes you appreciate the chaotic, noisy, and beautifully living blue marble we call home. We take our thick air, our magnetic shield, and our liquid water for granted every single day. Mars is not a backup plan for when we ruin the Earth. It is a warning of what Earth could become if we fail to protect it. Mars is not our future. It is a lesson in planetary mortality. It tells us that while the stars are beautiful, they are cold, and that there is truly no place like the world we were born to inhabit. The red planet is a silent, dusty tomb, and its greatest value is showing us how lucky we are to be alive on the blue